I'm Brian Costello, and welcome to the Teacher's Journey podcast, where we talk with some of the best educators around about learning and life as they share the stories that made them the educators they are today.
Bachelor's degree.
You too, huh?
What am I going to do with this degree? Someone suggested I'd be good at teaching. Like, you might be right, but that's another year of school. But I went ahead and took the plunge and did that extra time and got substituting right away and fell in love.
So let's dig into that a little bit. So like you went to, what did you go to college? What was your major in college?
My major was English because I went to college thinking, what do I know the least about? And I didn't have great English teachers. So I chose English because I wanted to get smarter. Not how I would advise picking a major, but it worked for me.
Oh, I disagree. I think that's a great way to pick a major. I mean, I picked a major that challenged, I picked my majors based on the classes that challenged me to think the most. And I see that as a way to really advance yourself and make you a better thinker. So kudos for wanting to learn more. That's awesome. I think that should be a sign right there that teaching was going to be in your future. So you've graduated and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do as an English major, because there's lots of things that you can do as an English major, but not many of them that involve being an English major. So you went back to school, you started subbing. Talk about subbing, because one of the things I think is interesting is for those of us who didn't figure this out right away, and there's plenty of us out there, myself included, that walking into the classroom and starting to be in a school was an aha moment, like, oh, wow, this is amazing. So can you tell me a little bit about you going back into the classroom, like going into the classroom, going back to school to get your teaching cert? Like, what about subbing? Was there a moment? Was it just the whole thing? I mean, what happened in subbing where you just realized this is where I got to be?
Well, even though I love learning, school is difficult for me. I have to figure little tricks that are going to help me prepare to get that final done. I put tens and tens of hours into it. I was that kid that would fall asleep doing homework at night, and just not a fun experience at all. So then when I go and I sub and I'm helping these kids and being able to break it down to the little steps and watch the kiddo get it, there's just not a greater reward. And the other end, the really nice thing about subbing is you get to taste and know kind of what you like more than others.
Preschool is not for me.
That's how I was. I hated it eventually, but I was so grateful for the opportunity. I subbed for 2 weeks in kindergarten. I moved as a mass with 20 little entities attached to me. And I knew there was no way I was a kindergarten teacher.
Well, they didn't know where the tissues were, and you were the best thing to wipe their nose on. I mean, there you go.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I loved teaching kindergarten. It was so much fun. But, those things, they're not for everybody. And when I made a shift to middle school, I couldn't really process how I was going to handle all that. But I realized that middle schoolers and kindergartners have a lot more in common than I thought. So it was, they are very different, but they have a lot of things in common. So you were subbing, you went back to school, you got your degree, and you got a job, or you didn't? Like, how did that go?
Well, I was very fortunate. As I was subbing, principals were impressed that, well, first off, that I didn't just leave, because I wasn't in an easy environment as far as the type of kiddos that I was working with. And many subs would say, I'm never coming back here again. And I wasn't that person. So back in the day, you had to basically work a semester for free unless you got tapped to work on emergency credential. So I got tapped to do the emergency credential thing, which was very fortunate for me.
And what were you teaching? So what did you go in to start teaching? Obviously not kindergarten.
No, not kindergarten. I started at middle school, and I was the English department, which I loved, but it was a lot. So I taught 7th grade English, 8th grade English, journalism, yearbook, drama.
All the classes.
Yeah. Yes.
So that, I think that is interesting because when I've talked to some different people their first year, one of the things they talked about was that helped them. A lot of people said it's having a strong department, but then one of the things they said that people have said made them a stronger teachers when they actually had to do all this stuff by themselves. So your first year, there you are doing everything by yourself on your emergency credential. You are the English department for an entire middle school. How did you, what was the feeling like when you walked in the classroom and they're like, all right, this is me, I got this covered? Or were you like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what to do?
Well, I really loved it because I was teaching something that I knew I didn't learn. So while I was going to school, I was teaching myself throughout college. And then coming back to the classroom was all about breaking it down into little steps. Like, I already did this. I got it because I had to do it for myself. So I really wasn't worried about how I was teaching. I was more worried about management at first because you just never know. Even now, the beginning of each year, it's like, it's a surprise. Are these kids going to be awesome and poof, just listen right away? Or do we have to lay the law down? What happens?
It's usually someone in the middle, but
Yes.
yeah, no, my kids didn't do any of that. The beginning, I think the first year there was a lot of pain, I think is the right word for it. So that's great. So you taught like 5 different classes, and you had to learn all this stuff, the things you were teaching. You had to learn all of that on the fly, basically, as you were teaching. So throughout that first year, how did you manage all of it? Like, how did you manage to learn all these you learned 5 new curriculums. You were a new teacher. You were learning how to manage kids. You were learning how to be in your school and function in a schoolwork environment, and all those things together, and probably trying to live a life maybe even a tiny bit outside of school. So how did that all fit together? Like, how did you pull all that into one human being?
So I was extremely fortunate. My first year teaching, and I've been teaching my 23rd year. I think it's kind of like your age. Once you're over a certain age, you don't know how old you are. So I'm somewhere over 20 years, so not 30 yet. My first year principal still is my best principal I've ever had. Philomena Hall was my first principal, and she was so supportive and encouraging. And when she would come into the classroom, there was never a gotcha thing. She totally had my back and was right there to support me and helped me with everything.
That's great. Did you find that the rest of your staff, people in your building that you worked with, were they also supportive? Was that the kind of environment you were in, or was it just like,
no,
you didn't really have time to talk to anybody else because you were too busy?
So another fun fact is special ed got mainstreamed because at the time the special ed teacher would put all of the answers into a can. The kids would just draw the answers out of the can and kind of match them up to the problems that the teacher had given them. So not only was it my first year, I also had the whole spectrum of special ed included, and definitely it was a very small school, but definitely had the teachers that were done and ready to retire. I did have issues with students. Like one day, a vial of pepper spray was expelled in my classroom, and the kid that got a felony was bragging because the other kid only got a misdemeanor. That's the clientele I was dealing with day to day.
I did better than that. So, yeah, I just find that amazing because, it's so difficult to do the job, to go through and figure all this stuff out. And, it seems like, minus your administrator, who's obviously really helpful, but also not a peer that can kind of guide you and push you through, that you did a lot of it without a whole lot of peer support, which is pretty amazing. So moving through, now that you're through that first year, you're not at that school anymore. Talk about the next steps, the progression of, when you kind of figured out, all right, I know how to do this. I know what I'm doing, or at least I can pretend I know what I'm doing well enough that nobody's going to notice. What point, is that right away, or did that take some time? How did you feel about all that?
I felt pretty good. And then I think I got a little cocky because the following year I was tapped to start presenting and help other teachers teach English. And I was like, wait, what? Me? So once I started presenting just a couple years, like, well, maybe I should get a master's degree and have something else behind me to like make me a little bit more valid. But the degrees and the papers really don't show your value. It's what you do with the kids, your processes with them, what works, the connections and relationships you're able to build.
So then, you're working at school, things seem to go pretty well. What caused you to move? Like what was the decision to leave there and move on to a new district?
I just needed to go back to school. I was still in the middle of that. So I was commuting quite a ways to the college I was attending, and I decided to teach at a school that was closer to the university.
Okay. And then when you moved there, what were you teaching? Like, what did you teach next? What were you, what was the next step for you? How did it kind of progress?
So next I had to teach high school English. So it's still different curriculum, different people, different teachers, different makeup of the student body. So it was like starting over again.
Oh yeah. And what was the environment like? What was the school like? Was it one where, were you with other English teachers this time, or were you by yourself? Or
this time I did have other English teachers, thankfully, and that was nice to have someone I could at least, talk to or would get what I'm saying.
So was it difficult for you, like as someone who had pretty much made up all the stuff on your own, to then go back and have to compromise it all, or have someone say, we're going to do it this way, and you need to do it this way with us, like that kind of stuff.
That was
always difficult for me, going from this is just how I do things to, all right, I'm working on a team now and we do things and I need to make sure I am part of that team.
Well, I didn't realize how to utilize a team to even like run curriculum by. So I was kind of just like making my stuff up and going, and just decided I wanted to continue my project-based learning. And so that's what I did with these students, because I saw it was successful. And so I just believed, it worked this 1 year, it'll work again, and implemented that. The big difference, though, and it was a challenge for me, is that the principals are different. Not every single principal has a teacher's best interest in mind. And that was really hard for me to deal with. So again, I'm at a very small school, and there would be times where the principal would even kind of periods of, you need to take care of things. So I was teaching yearbook at my second school, and I needed to get some photographs made. So I went to an assistant principal and asked her to period set for me so I could take care of this. And it was like I insulted her. It was the worst thing I could have asked, to have her period set. Like, how dare I? And she just
need to be in a classroom? That's absurd.
That she was above that and didn't have time for something like that. And it kind of went downhill from there.
Yeah, that sounds like a bad start to that relationship. You and this person were clearly not on the same page. But I do also think it's interesting. So that different principals, they have different things in mind. And one of the things that I had learned in a pretty severe way is that different people also have different expectations of what they want to see in your classroom. And while you still want to make sure you do your thing, you also have to figure out how it fits. So you kind of have to figure out how to take their pieces of, their pieces of their vision and incorporate them into what you do well. And I found that out the hard way in the first time I switched administrators. But it is interesting, because the more times you switch places, the more you realize that, different people are looking for different things, and there are ways to still do what you do, but also fit into their vision or whatever they want to see happening, at least to a degree. So obviously things didn't work out, I guess is where this is heading.
Well, it was interesting. To this day, that is still my favorite group of students, but the administration told me I was the wrong color to last there.
Wow.
So, yeah, I started looking for a different location after I was told that.
That's tough. That's got to be hard to hear. Yeah, I don't even know what to say after that. It's just like, well, all right then.
Yeah, I can't really change that. Sorry, I love the kids. That's not good enough, I guess.
Hey, I mean, there's something to be said for representation, but for you to, to get a job and then be told you can't keep the job because you're the wrong color to work there. That's difficult when you're, trying to make your way as a teacher and do good things for kids. So,
right. So that's my second year of teaching. If I had not had that principal my first year, I don't think I would have stayed in education.
Yeah. And I feel like there's always somebody who does that for us, who pulls, because I think that's a normal thing that happens. You not normal in the fact that your specific situation isn't normal, but that you have that moment or that trying ordeal that is going to either break you or you're going to push through it. And in this case, you push through it. So you moved to school number 3 schools in 3 years. First of all, that's a challenge in and of itself. So what next? I mean, middle school English, high school English, and then
high school English Academy. It can't stay the same.
No, of course not.
And then high school drama as well, doing full-blown productions.
All right. So talk about that. That sounds interesting. So experiences putting on productions. I mean, what happens? What are your experiences as a teacher whose job is to essentially put on, and people expect really, really big things, especially at a high school level. Like they expect high quality from those things. Mm-hmm. And even at the middle school level, like when people come to shows at that level, they expect them to be good, like really good. So talk about a little bit about what it's like to have to run those, to put them on, the kind of, the kind of drama you deal with when you're dealing with drama.
So that I do have background in, and I was doing a lot of theater work and started to do some bit work stuff with films when I was going to college initially. And if I could have just been successful in that vein, had the regular paycheck, I would have needed the teaching credential. But I like having food in my house, so we went the smart path and got the teaching credential. Yeah, food's good. Kind of use it every day.
Sometimes.
So when I interviewed for the position, I let them know I have all the acting background. I can definitely direct, but I would need someone to help me with the technical part, like the set building and programming the soundboards. Says, oh yeah, sure, we'll hire someone part-time. We'll take care of that. I had never done tech because, I was always on stage, so I didn't have that experience. Well, that person never got hired.
No, that person that was hired, they were you.
So I was teaching myself how to make sets and being smart enough to find plays that needed minimal set design. I'm loading wood into my Saturn and break out one of the tail lights.
I don't need that. You have another one. You're good to go.
Yeah, and Saturn is a perfect vehicle to haul wood into.
Of course. I mean, I had a Saturn when they're perfect for pretty much any major, construction material haul that you need to do. And so you started figuring out how to operate the soundboard, I assume, at some point?
Yes.
Which, led you to becoming a tech wizard, of course. And that was
we'll go with that.
That was step one into your journey of becoming a teacher librarian who engages her kids in all kinds of crazy, awesome tech stuff. So, just think of it that way. That first experience of having to figure out how to program a soundboard.
I'm definitely not afraid to delve in and learn something that I have no idea about.
Yeah. Hey, you'll figure it out, or you won't, and it'll be okay.
Mhm.
But so how long, how long did you work in, and did you stay at that school for a little while? Did you, um,
No.
no, okay. That was a short answer. No. All right.
I know, it's so bad. Like, oh, this school, this school, this school. But
No,
it's
it's
really
okay.
not bad. It's life happens. So I was there for
It's
2
important
years.
for people to hear that, because people have this idea that they're going to get a job and they're going to be there for 30 years and it's going to be the perfect thing and everything's going to be great and they're going to they're going to change the world, and maybe they will, but not always a straight line. So
Yeah, sometimes it's life instances.
so year 4, school number 4, right?
Uh-huh.
Wow. Okay. So we're four for four. About 1,000.
So I acquired a husband at this time and was having, yeah. And we had a baby coming, and the school did not like that this baby was going to definitely infringe on all the productions that I was doing, because I would do some kind of production once a month, which I know is crazy. I only did 2 major ones, but I had like lesser things, like a murder mystery dinner theater. That's what I considered a lesser thing on my off months.
In my free time, I was creating murder mysteries and move for dinner theater. Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I imagine being super pregnant would be really difficult to build sets and haul construction materials. I mean, not impossible, but it would definitely put a cramp in the in the set building style, at least. So
yeah. So last semester, my husband was basically bringing dinner to the school so that we could see each other while I was in the midst of building sets. Well, since I wasn't knowledgeable enough, I was afraid to even have students help me. And then they didn't want that anyways, because it's like, oh no, power tools with these students that don't know.
Yeah, it's not like, here's a soldering iron, go at it.
Uh-huh.
Swear I'd never done that before. But yeah, so, all right, so next job, what are you doing now?
So I went back to middle school, because where I'm at, there's one district is the high school district. So if you leave, you can't just poof, come back. So went to middle school, and now I'm teaching English and drama. And I learned don't do a production a month. Oh, and I went back to coaching volleyball too, because
you didn't have enough to do with the baby
subjects. Yeah.
And productions and teaching. Yeah. So, middle school, you've now done, this is your 4th school, you have a baby, you have a life outside of the school, so you're not going to be there till 10 o'clock every night building sets. How did you find the balance there? Because I think that's also really difficult, because a lot of teachers start when they don't really have a family, and then life kind of changes. And, how did that really change, one, your perspective on what you were doing, and then 2, how did it change the way you did your job?
Yeah, the balance is definitely a struggle. And in fact, that's my one word for this year is balance. I love block schedule for English. So I greatly enjoyed, it was a school setup where you saw every class each day, but English was a 2-period time slot. So basically my student load was cut in half. So coming from the high school to the middle school, it almost seemed like I had more time.
Because you didn't have quite as many students, you had, there's double long periods.
Mm-hmm.
So you had more time in school. So that kind of helped with the post-school hours to level out a little bit of what you're doing.
Right, because I'm teaching English, so I firmly believe the only way to get better at writing is you write. It can't just be once a month.
Yes, the more you write, the better your writing becomes, by far.
And granted, you're not like this major editor and marking everything up, but if the kiddo writes it, you kind of owe it to them to read it, and they'll call you on it too. Hey, did you like my piece I wrote about yada yada? You better have an answer.
It was great.
Yeah.
Really, I didn't really love it, but I just figured it was good enough to turn in. And I'm like, no, great. Yeah. No.
Mm-hmm.
I just threw it down the stairs. No. So, all right, we've made it through 4 years. We have 4 different positions, 4 different things you've been teaching. You have all these years left to go. Was there a point where you like found the place where you were and that's where you've been? Like, how long did it take you to find this, like where you were? Not that I don't want to hear every stop along the way, but I know there's not 23 or so of them. So, like,
well, I'm open to offers right now. So,
well, did you find some consistency at all? Like, was that, and if so, did that help with, with what you do? I mean, did you find any consistency where you're able to teach the same thing for a couple of years in a row, or work at least in the same school or same school district? Or
okay, so then I got displaced. That's okay. That's not me leaving. That's school size and needs changing. So I went to another school and then had a baby, so then had to go to another school. That's so interesting. The children do that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I just needed where I was at to work with me having an infant. So then I opened up a school and was really excited about getting a chance to be grassroots at a school and whatnot. And after a couple years there was a lot of dissettling, and just the way the school was being managed wasn't in the best interest for anyone. And people were getting very stressed out. The teachers started leaving like crazy whenever they could. I waited till about the third year and then put in to leave. I put in to leave my fourth year. I put in to leave my fifth year. Fifth year, I got out.
Wow. So, was it just a culture where there was like too much expected of you, or not? I mean, without asking you to throw anyone specifically under the bus, what was it about the culture that everybody wanted to get out?
It was really coming down to how admin was treating the teachers. And it was so bad that the students saw it. The students got to where they were speaking up for the teachers. And in fact, that's what finally saved the school, is the students spoke out at a board meeting and expressed how horrible this is with the teachers leaving because of how they're being treated.
Yeah, and that's a shame. I mean, I know there are a number of reasons why teachers move from place to place, and you probably know all of them, but that's really the worst. I mean, not only because it's difficult for the teachers, but it undermines their ability and the kids' ability to learn. So that's really difficult. So tell me about being a teacher librarian. How did you become a teacher librarian? Like, how did you get there?
So that was how I got out.
To finally, all right, we're in the library. How do we get there?
So it had just gotten to where it was too bad for me to juggle. I basically wound up having severe anxiety, and I was even to the point where I had to utilize prescriptions to help me juggle the situations that were happening at work and still come home and make sure I'm a decent person to my husband and my children. And that's not easy when you have a day of being told how horrible you are.
Yeah.
So
just kind of praise on your ability to even function at home. And when it starts to get to the point where you can't function at home,
mm-hmm.
I mean, we all have days like that will take that take a toll on us, or events that take a toll on us. But when it's every day, all the time, I can't imagine I can't imagine what that's like to have to deal with that. So, one, thank you for sharing it, because I think that's the honesty, the bravery, or just come on and say that my job gave me anxiety, because I don't think a lot of us want to admit that sometimes teaching is so overwhelming. And sometimes it's overwhelming for reasons it shouldn't be. But I think that's just, yeah. So did it get better when you got out, or when you got out of there, did you look for something different, or?
So to get out, I applied for everything I felt I was remotely qualified for. So that included English, every school site that had it open. And there was teacher librarian, like, oh, I could do that. I have an English degree. I have
I like
literacy
books.
degree. Yeah, I could so help students in the library and do that research stuff and have fun and geek out about anything. Yeah, I can do that. So I had all of my interviews set up, and the first one that I went to was the one for the teacher librarian. I was told I had the job before I even got home.
You're like, I'll take it.
Well, at first I wasn't. I was like, well, I don't know, because, I had been presenting for quite a while now, and I felt at the top of my game in English world, and like I was doing some really great stuff, and I was afraid to start really all over again, doing something completely different, and having to like crawl myself back up to just be like even mediocre. But my darling husband, he let me know that maybe I should take it, because what if I didn't get any other offers?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, yes, what? Of course everyone wants me.
Well, yeah, of course they do, but at the same time, just in case, you should take it, and then if you get this other job, you can just be like, oh.
Yeah, because he was the one that would get the warning phone calls when the days were super bad. Hey, I'm sorry, I'm going to need a few minutes before I get home.
Yeah.
So I took the job.
A few hours, maybe. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
So that's great. I mean, but that's great. And did that help? I mean, just getting out, was it just getting out of that environment, or did it take time, like, to kind of repair some of the damage that was done?
It helped a lot, because I was at a school site where I now felt that I had support. There were people that enjoyed working with me, that saw value in having discussion with me. There were people that were just happy to see me smiling. and that was nice, just to have interactions that didn't make me feel like crap every day. The downside, though, was there's a special credential to be a teacher librarian. So I had to go back to school again and get that degree.
Because you really enjoyed school the first few times so much that you had to go back again.
Oh, yeah. And by this point, I am all the way over on the salary schedule. So another unit does not benefit me whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I understand that completely. Because I was asked at my first school a couple times to go back and get a special ed credential. And I say, I have 2 master's degrees. And we don't pay for the doctorate. So I said, are you paying for the special ed degree? Because I can't afford to pay for any more school.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, no. I'm like, they don't get any more money, but I get the job. So I'm going to just go ahead and not do that right now. As much as I love working with special ed population kids, I really do. They're some of the best kids to work with. It's like, I can't.
I get to work with them. They come in the library and work with me.
I get to work with them too now. So, I mean, like, granted, they were already in my classroom, so it wasn't like we were all inclusion anyway. So they were already in my classroom. That's why they wanted me to get the degree. But so now you got your next credential, library media specialist. And, when you first started, obviously you were learning a lot, but were you pushing boundaries at that point? Like, were you trying new things and what did you think the teacher librarian or library media specialist was actually going to do? Like, when you walked in there, did you think that you were doing what you do now?
No, absolutely not. Even this year, I teach things that didn't even really exist last year. So the whole concept about preparing for jobs that don't exist yet, yeah, I live that world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, things that I did this year, I definitely, some of those things didn't exist last year, and others, no one would have let me do with them the last year because it's like, that's crazy. But now everybody's just like, oh yeah, sure, whatever you want, because they know that the kids are engaged in it, and they get stuff out, they learn things from it. So, I guess that's probably one of the things that's exciting about what you do is there's always new things to learn, right? So you seem like you've always been interested in learning more things, and you like to digest the stuff. So, when you're in the library, so how do you how do you engage the kids and push them beyond? Because when I think of like what I did when I went to the library, like we looked for books and we learned a little bit about how to research on the computer, and we wrote on note cards, and like, and when I got to college, it was just a place where I could quietly work in like on a couch or something that where people weren't drunk, and it was like, okay, that's great. Like, this is the quiet place to work where people are also working, and I can try to do that. So in the library, you know, how do you decide what fits what you do?
Well, books are still essential. Like, if we're not pleasure reading, there's going to be a collapse of society. Mark Twain said it best: the man that does not read is no better than the man that cannot read.
Anything that you don't use is not any better than not knowing how to do it, of course. Yeah. So
but I get to collaborate with classroom teachers, see what they're doing. And a lot of times I just beg them to let me try something, like, oh, I got this new thing. Can I just like run with it? And can I try this or that? And they look at me with this weird face, but then usually say yes. So I'm like, thank you.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, but go ahead. When I've heard that, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So they'll come in, and maybe the teacher was working on theme. So we design a world in CoSpaces, a virtual reality world that helps explain the theme of a novel that they're reading. Or we're trying to get them excited about research. So we're reading stuff, and I have the students create book snaps that has the layers of annotation and comprehension, and then shifting various book snaps into a working outline to help them further their research process.
Yeah, and the fact that you are connecting that to research to me is like, oh, wow, like that makes research seem more interesting, especially since so often you don't really get, when you're in school, you don't really get enough choice in terms of what you want to research.
Remember I told you school's hard for me? It's also real easy for it to get boring, and I can't handle getting bored, so nope, we're moving on, getting engaged.
Well, that's great. And I mean, it sounds like the library is the kind of place where you personally can just keep learning new things and then sharing it with kids, and it gives you kind of the best of both worlds in terms of, you know, engaging with kids and trying out the stuff that people won't normally do in their classroom anyway, and translate those new tech things or those new other pieces into a love of reading and a love of learning. I think that's awesome.
I see that as an important part of what I do, to bring in the innovation that's available and then help the teacher to see in action with their standards, with their students, and then also see how engaged and then empowered their children become while they're doing it. It's totally that backwards, individualized, personal, professional development for that teacher that's in the library with me.
It's like, oh, I get it. And then they say yes every time you want to do something crazy with their kid, which is great. But How long did it take you to get that? Like, so it took me a solid year to build up enough trust with most of the teachers I work with. I'm like, hey, I want to do this. And they're like, okay.
So I love when we get new teachers. That's how I go. I'm like, hey. And it just seems like this is what everyone does here. So, of course, you're going to do it. And the poor new teacher doesn't know any better to say no to me or anything.
Yeah. They don't even know they can, right?
Right. And sometimes even teachers that I have worked with, it takes them a little bit. I worked almost a year before I could have classroom teachers really accept using book snaps. They didn't understand how I could make Snapchat a learning option or this emoji thing. They're totally like,
you just wait and see. I will ruin Snapchat for every kid you have.
Right. And now I have teachers like, I need to get in there. I have to do that book snap thing with you.
Like, we have to get it started. It's going to pass us by. Yeah, no, that's great though, and I think that's important. Is it takes some time to build the trust with people, and you have to show them how engaged their kids are and what value it brings for them. So,
and even when you have trust with the teacher, it doesn't mean they trust that new thing you're wanting to bring in.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what you mean. They just gotta kind of be like, hey, because when I talked to one of my science teachers, and she's awesome, and she pretty much lets me do anything that I want to do with her kids. Like, I want to do cardboard challenge. She's like, let's do it. Where do we get the cardboard? I'm like, I know a store. I'll get the boxes. Um, and like, I wanted to do co-spaces, and she's like, but we normally just make the Bohr models out of plate. Like, but the problem with the Bohr model, and it's literally the problem that they learn about the Bohr model, is that it's not flat. And I'm like, they can make it not flat. They can make it real, and they can have information about their atom, their atom pop up and their element pop up and explain, the protons and the neutron balance, the things that it's made with, and they can have all that pop up there on the screen while their Bohr model is electrons are spinning around in 3 dimensions. She's like, do you think they can actually do that? I said, well, we can find out.
Right.
And it turned out great. Like, it really did. It turned out great, but
Awesome.
it's just that, there's still that hesitation there, no matter how much trust someone has with you when you start throwing in things like, let's do some virtual reality. Like, I'm going to have your kids talk to people on the other side of the country. Why? Oh, you'll see. Let's just do it. So, got to this point in your career, you've done so much, you've been through a lot. I think that's fair to say that you've been through a lot of different experiences, both positive and negative along the way. It seems like for the most part, you've taken the positives out of most of them, wherever you can. And I think that hearing your story is really important for a lot of people. And like I said before, it's just a matter of, it's not always a straight line. It's not always the fairy tale, like, I'm here, I got my first job, and everybody loves me, and it's great, and it's going to be amazing. And then you get there, and you're like, oh my God, this is not what it's like at all. And then sometimes it is, but for a lot of people, it's not. And so I guess, what would you say helped you to pull through all that? I mean, if you were to talk to people who are either, about to go through, I don't want to say the same thing, but similar experiences where the road wasn't smooth, like the road wasn't smooth, or you were off-roading for a little while, so it's like not the same thing. But what would you say to people who are going to go through those things? What advice would you give to somebody who's either going through that now or is about to go through it, that really difficult stage of the journey?
Well, first off, there's no place that has 0 problems. And if there is, tell me, because so sometimes you just have to accept that the world does not evolve around you and everything doesn't work out. I know, shocker, but
Can't see my shocked face, but my shocked face is just jaw drop. I have no idea. No.
Everything doesn't work out the way you want it to, nor the way you think it should. And even in a place where I think politics should be the last thing happening, there's a lot of politics in schools. Yes. So even people that are telling you a choice that you don't like, sometimes that person telling you, that's not what they want either, but that's what they have to continue with. So in juggling that, it's simultaneously important to make sure you have a tribe of people that you can go to and support you in a positive way. Because you know before you talk to someone if they're going to help you or if they're going to be like, oh, that's horrible, you should just quit and go somewhere else. You don't need that extra negativity when you're already balancing other stuff. So having a core group that will support you and also making sure you have some solid educator friends. I think that's super important because people that don't teach, they can't get it. They can help you and support you and, hey, here's some chocolate. Will that help? But they can't get it if they haven't been in there dealing with the kids and dealing with the adults that act like kids.
Adults sometimes act like kids more than the kids. I think it's great that you brought up 2 things. Is that one, you have people, both teachers and non-teachers, but just people around you that are supportive and positive and help you navigate some of those bad times, and some of the people that are there for you for both sets. They're there for the good stuff and the bad, and they have chocolate. And then, also the politics. I mean, I wrote a whole chapter about politics in school, because politics in schools is something that most people don't know exists or don't recognize when they come into school, like for the first time. And the first time you realize it's there, it's like this shocking moment in your life where your utopian society has been shattered. And you're like, I had no idea that all these little sub-factions.
Are we all here for the kids?
We are, but we're also, grabbing power and making different moves for this or that, so that you can. And I think that's important to know how politics work, because you can't make things happen. You can't make real changes happen if you don't know who the people are that have that power, and who those people are, and what their goals are. And you have to know how they're trying to use you, so that you don't end up the pawn in someone else's game. You figure out what's important to you and how you can make it happen. So that's great advice. It's really, really sound advice for people. And I can't thank you enough for sharing so much of your story, and how, being honest and open with us. And I think that's such an important message for people, because you get all the great stuff. You always get the great stuff. I mean, Katie McNamara, teacher librarian, AASL social media superstar, also has been through so much. So like the great stuff, like you do amazing things in your classroom, in your library with kids. I see them on social media, and we've talked about them. I've seen some of the things that your kids do, and it's really cool. And you put all that out there, but sometimes you don't see the back story that went into it, and the years and years of hard work, and all the learning that you have to do for yourself to make this work. And also the struggles that you've been through. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate you sharing all of that with us, all that with the people who are listening, all like 7 of them. So it'd be great. Now, maybe 8, because I think my mom listens now. So, but no, seriously, I really do appreciate you sharing all that, because it's such a powerful message for people to hear.
Well, thank you. And that's the reason I share anything, is just that it can help someone else. And if only one person listening gleans from this, then awesome.
Well, I do. So, I mean, we're already at that point. Every time I get to talk to somebody, I learn. Every time I get to talk to somebody, I learn so much, not just about them, but about, about teaching and about myself and everything else. So thanks again. And I really do appreciate it. So Katie McNamara, everybody, amazing teacher librarian, Central California, and just give everybody a heads up on where they can get in touch with you or find you if they want to, reach out to you or find anything more out about Katie.
You can connect with me on Twitter, is where I'm probably the most social, at Katie J. McNamara, and I have the same handle on Voxer. If you also want to really connect with me, I'm currently organizing Ed Change Global that goes down in July. We are looking for people to attend and also be game changers with us.
Excellent. And that's Ed Change Global website would be
edchangeglobal.com.
Obviously, I should have known that. That's what happens when I don't do all the homework. So edchangeglobal.com. Ed Change Global is a fantastic event, online, worldwide. That runs 24 hours, doesn't it?
Yeah, 24 hours. We have all the continents except for Antarctica involved.
I hear there's going to be some National Geographic people going to Antarctica, some pretty cool teachers and stuff going with them. So maybe if that time slot corresponds, you can have like 7 continents, the entire.
Awesome. There you go.
So that sounds great. So connect with Katie, reach out to her. She's got amazing ideas. And thank you so much again for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Teacher's Journey.
Thank you.
So thanks again to Katie McNamara, our guest tonight. Check her out on Twitter, on Voxer, and connect with her to find out more about Ed Change Global at edchangeglobal.com. You can follow us on Spreaker, iTunes, and hear us now on iHeartRadio. Thanks again for joining us on The Teacher's Journey. We'll catch you next time.